Today I'm going to have a go at some budget-friendly batch cooking for breakfast. I'm going to try to make some cheap breakfast muffins with a difference. So I need to make some bread dough, and I'm just going to start a timer running because part of this is going to be the time budget. And I'll explain what this video was going to be and what it actually is ended up being as I work. So I had this plan. Jenny's away for a week visiting relatives, and I thought I'll walk to the shops since Jenny's got the car, and I'll pick up as much shopping as I can carry, as much cheap shopping as I can carry, and we'll do a whole week of budget videos where I'll measure and weigh and calculate everything, time, nutrition, all those sorts of things. Turns out that was really, really impractical. Actually, there's just no way to do that. So I've got 500 grams of plain flour. Now, we're making bread, but we don't need strong flour for this. Ordinary plain wheat flour will do. So that's 500 grams of flour. I've got one little sachet of instant yeast here. This is the one I brought back from Spain, actually. So I think I paid €1 for 5 sachets. So we'll just mix that in. We'll have a pinch of salt and mix those dry ingredients together. To those dry ingredients, I'm adding 300 ml of water. 500 grams of flour to 300 ml of water is a fairly reliable mix for making a bread dough. I'm just going to stir that together with a knife just to get everything combined. Just trying to pick up all the dry flour from the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to get my hand in there and try and pick up all the dry flour and get that combined. I'm not going to bother kneading this for ages and ages to try and develop gluten. We're just going to let time do that. So that now needs to be covered and left in a warm place to develop. So that was nearly 3 minutes of preparation. So as I say, the plan here is to calculate the time, the cost, the cooking cost of all of these things I'm doing today. I was going to do the whole video like this, but there's a reason why I didn't. Doing a thing versus doing a thing and recording everything you're doing and writing down and calculating everything at the same time are two different tasks, and one is significantly more difficult than the other. It's good in a way that it has turned out to be utterly impractical to do what I set out to do, because that illustrates a point that I think I need to make. I've never been trying to prove that you can get by on a tiny amount of money. I've been trying to hone my skills of overcoming challenges. That's all I've ever been trying to do. A lot of people have taken my budget challenge videos to mean that I think poor people should get by on a very small amount of money. I've never thought that, and I don't think that. Anyway, I'll talk more about this later. We need to leave that bread to prove now for probably a couple of hours. It'll double in size, then we'll knock it back. We won't have to do very much kneading here. But while that's happening, I can prepare one or two other bits. And the next thing is bacon. This is so-called cooking bacon, which always makes me laugh a little bit because nearly all bacon is cooking bacon. The reason it's called cooking bacon is actually it's like recipe bacon. This is offcuts and misshapes and trimmings from the whole process of producing nice, neat, tidy bacon slices or rashers. This is all the odds and ends that weren't so presentable. And they package it up and sell it cheap, which is great, because if you just want bacon for putting in recipes and you don't care what it looks like, you can get bacon quite a bit cheaper than buying it as packs of nice neat rashers. Anyway, going to make some little bacon patties to go inside of my breakfast muffins. And I'm going to use the more scrappy bits at the bottom of the pack here, which, you can see that it's not neat slices of bacon, it's all just odds and ends. We're going to have just about 400 grams of bacon. I'm going to put the rest of the bacon in that box in the fridge. In addition, I'm going to have about half a cup of oats in there. This will just help to bind these little bacon patties together. So we're going to go for 50 grams of oats, just rolled oats. And so into my food processor, my oats, my bacon, and I'm going to put about a teaspoonful of sage, maybe, about a level teaspoonful of dried sage. And because why not, we're going to have about less than that, about a quarter of a teaspoonful of chili flakes. And now I'm just going to process that until it's kind of like sausage meat. Looking reasonably good. Just break it up because it was forming one great big ball. Okay, I think we're there. So this ball of bacon sausage stuff, I want to divide this into 12 pieces. And what I'm going to do is actually divide it into quarters first and then break each of those quarters into 3 to make that a bit easier. About a tablespoon of oil just in the pan just to stop things sticking. And that timer was on 5:31, but we're going to start again because I want to time the cooking time this time. And that's a quarter of my bacon, sausage, meat, whatever, which I'll just divide into 3. And that's going to go in the pan like that. I'll squish it down in a minute. Just needs to be kind of roughly divided into portions. And then each one of these, I'm just going to press them down a bit just to make them into little patties. That one seems a bit smaller than the rest, but never mind. Well, part of the reason for using the oats here is to just bulk things out a bit, add a bit of fibre, but also the oats will soak up some of the juices and fats from the bacon, so we won't be wasting that. It'll kind of just stay with the food, and we'll get the maximum food value out of the bacon. These have now had nearly 7 minutes of cooking. It's just, starting to colour up on the other side. I will cook them a bit further than this, obviously, but I'm just going to flip them over now to set them on both sides. Okay, we're 11 minutes in, and these are now fully cooked. If I probed these, they'd be perfectly safe to eat. But I'm just going to take them a little bit further just to get a bit more browning on them, because that equates to flavour. Yep, okay, I think we're good. Yeah, so I'm just going to turn that off now. Yeah, they've got sufficient browning on them, and we'll just let them continue to sizzle in the residual heat. So that was just over 12 minutes. Right, we're not quite finished because I've got an onion which I'm going to fry in the pan that the bacon came out of. Now, if I had not been standing here wittering at the camera earlier, I might have just kept this pan hot and taken the bacon out and put the onion straight in. But I didn't. Anyway, those are my bacon patties, and the onions that I'm about to cook will deglaze some of this flavour off the pan here. Still a bit of fat in there from the bacon, so I don't think I need any additional oil. In fact, just to help those onions start off, tiny little splash of water. That'll just help the juices come out of the onions, make better contact with the pan, better use of the heat. Right, so that's about 6 minutes, and those onions are done. Alright, the bread dough has now more than doubled in size. Time to get this out, give it a knead, and we'll make our buns. So I can get the amount right, I've weighed this bag, and I'll weigh it again afterwards, and we'll subtract one from the other, and I'll know how much extra flour I've added. Anyway, just going to get this dough out. A little bit of oil would probably have helped that come out easier. So this ball of dough is, well, you can see the gluten has really developed in it. I don't need to knead this too much. I'm just going to knock some of the air out of it, some of the big bubbles, because those could cause leakage of the contents of these buns that I'm going to stuff. Okay, that is all the kneading that this requires, and I need to divide this into 12 equal portions. So again, we're going to go in half, each of these in half, and then each of these quarters into 3. So something like that. That seems about right. A bit more flour. And each of these pieces here, I'm just going to form into a nice ball. Roll them out a little bit. Not too much. I'm going to assemble my breakfast fillings into these buns. Got some extra mature cheese, same price as mild, medium and mature cheese. That's weird. Didn't seem to be any difference in price, so I got the extra mature because that's where the flavour is. I'm just going to grate some of this in here. I've weighed the whole pack of cheese in advance so I can know how much cheese I've actually used. Okay, that'll do for now. Eva's come running because she heard cheese. Okay, and there's going to be baked beans as well. I bought a tin of baked beans. These are the cheapest of cheap beans. You don't even get a pull tab on these. Actually, they look all right. So, here's how this is going to go. Cheese, onions, a few baked beans. I have to be a bit careful here because if I overfill these, they're going to get really messy. One of my bacon patties, and then kind of carefully bring those up like that. Okay. And then that is just going to go in a tray to prove again. So, repeat process. Let's try that again. Hopefully without the dog woofing this time. Not too thin on top here because I don't want the fillings to just burst through. One of the things that can most easily go wrong with this sort of bun is you roll it too thin and you end up with all of the dough on the bottom and then the fillings actually break through the top. Onion, beans, one of these bacon patties, and again just bring up the dough around the edge like that. I don't think it's going to matter too much if there's a hole in the bottom. Because I think where it's going to be sitting on that, that'll just kind of heal itself up. That's my theory anyway. So I've got to carry on now and make 12 of those. I'll keep the clock running. I'm going to bake these so that they come out a bit like bread rolls. You could, of course, steam them and they would be like Chinese steamed buns, except with a not so Chinese filling. Okay, this is the last one. And this has been more time consuming than I thought it would be. This has been 20 minutes of assembly. And I didn't actually anticipate it would take that long. But there it is anyway. We're learning things. And I have actually used about half of my can of beans. Now I might be making a terrible mistake not completely sealing these up on the bottom here. Time will tell. I think the fact that there is a disc of bacon in there will save it from getting too messed up. There we go. So there's my 12 breakfast muffins. I just need to let them prove now for maybe half an hour, then we'll put them in the oven. These have been proving for about half an hour now. I'm just going to brush them with a little bit of water. The clock is running, but it's now running counting the amount of time the oven has been on, because we've got to do the gas calculation for running the oven. My energy calculations for all this cooking are going to be based on my earlier video where I did some empirical testing of my cooker and various other things. So we're going to work out how much this costs to bake from that video. I know that cooking costs are one of the things that people worry about the most, and energy costs are horrific at the moment, although they are apparently coming down a little bit. But most of the cost of energy is not actually, for me anyway, a standing charge. It's not actually the cost of the gas I use, it's the cost for the privilege of having gas in the house. Anyway, oven's been preheating for 5 minutes. Those can now go in. Right, those have had a total of 35 minutes. I can see we've had a little bit of a failure here, but most of them look pretty much intact. We've had a bit of bean stuff coming out here. There's a little bit more over there as well. Anyway, I've got to let those cool before I try and move them anyway, but they're nicely baked, nice crisp crust. Brushing water on the bread before baking it helps to brown the crust and helps to provide a really nice crispy crust. Alright, time to get these out onto a rack. Let's see if they will come off the tray. Yeah, I might just split up the batch here actually and just not try and lift all 12 at once. So there we are, 12 breakfast muffins, in theory containing breakfast. Now I'm going to open one right now, but these can be cooled down. Oh good, actually this is what I hoped would happen. Actually the bread at the bottom has just closed up and sealed up the gap. I think, yeah, they've all done that. Fine, okay, so these can be obviously eaten right now. So if I had 12 people to feed breakfast, here we are, here's breakfast, or 6 hungry people. But these can be cooled down and they stand in the fridge for a few days and they just need to be warmed up in the microwave. They could also be frozen and then just thawed overnight in the fridge and in the microwave in the morning. But anyway, I expect you want to see what they look like inside. All right, I'm not sure how well this is going to cut because it's still quite hot. There we go. So that's the breakfast muffin filling. We've got the bacon there. The beans are still got a bit of sauce to them. Cheese has disappeared into nowhere. What does it taste like though? It's pretty good. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that for breakfast. Now I think this problem I had with them tearing at the sides would have been avoided by putting them on 2 trays so they had space and they didn't join up as a batch. So maybe that was a bit of a gaffe, but anyway, breakfast muffins. Not bad at all. So back now I think to Studio Shrimp for the analysis of cost and time and effort and everything else.
So, having recorded all the details for these little breakfast buns, it's time for a little bit of analysis. First, the nutritional breakdown. Each bun contains approximately 291 dietary calories, that's big C calories or kilocalories. 13 grams of protein, 9 grams of fat, 39 grams of carbohydrates and 3 grams of fibre. I don't think that's a terrible start to the day if I was indoors making videos. If I was planning something more active, then maybe I'd want 2 of these, or one for breakfast and another one for second breakfast or 11s. Cost for the ingredients to make these was pretty reasonable. All of these ingredients were cheap, at least in the amounts used here, and of course I've priced this pro rata by the amount used. The total price to buy the whole packs of flour, bacon, salt and cheese would have come to £12.53, but the pro rata cost of the actual amounts I used to make 12 muffins came in at just under £2, £1.96, so the ingredient cost per muffin is only 16 pence. 16 pence per breakfast muffin. What a headline! You can make breakfast for 16 pence. Except, of course, that's not the end of the story. The most obvious omission here is the cost of cooking, and there's been a lot of talk about this, but in fact the cost of cooking these buns was quite modest. And as I mentioned earlier, these numbers are based on empirical testing of the actual metered billable usage of gas or electricity consumed by the appliances in my kitchen in an earlier video. Frying the bacon and onions for a total of 18 minutes cost 7 pence. Baking the buns for 35 minutes in the gas oven cost 9 pence. And assuming these 12 buns will also each need a 1 minute warm up in the microwave, 12 minutes of microwave use costs 9 pence. So a total of about 25 pence for the batch, or around 2 pence per bun. So these buns cost 18 pence each to make. But that's still not the end of the story, because the buns didn't assemble themselves. And adding up all the time I spent preparing and cooking, not including things like baking, where I was able to walk away and do something else, just the time I spent standing in the kitchen doing work was about 55 minutes, plus about 21 minutes washing and cleaning and putting away. So 76 minutes of preparation effort. I don't know how to realistically price my own time, as I don't have a clearly defined salary, but priced at the national living wage of £10.42 per hour, that's £13.24 for the whole time spent, or £1.10 per bun. So suddenly, my cheap 18 pence breakfast buns now cost £1.28 each. Now, I don't know if that's a fair and proper way to price the time required to make these, but I don't have a better idea, and if you have a better idea, the raw numbers are there on screen for you to use in your own calculations. But the cost of the time spent here can't be completely ignored in a world where politicians with expense budgets are bloviating about how poor people should just learn to cook, as if they couldn't already. 76 minutes spent in the kitchen is 76 minutes not available to work overtime to earn money at a minimum wage job where you have to clock out just to take a pee. 76 minutes earning money for food or all the things that aren't food. Because boy, are there ever a lot of things that consume money that aren't food. Hidden variables and factors. Hold that thought, we're coming back to it via the following brief diversion, which also happens to be about hidden factors, but I hope illustrates my point. This video is, 20-something minutes long? It's easy when watching something like this, and a lot of people do, to assume that I spent 20-something minutes messing around in the kitchen to make this video. What you're watching here is the tip of the iceberg. bear with me on this because there is a point and it's not about me. I spent a couple of hours planning this project. The walk to and from the shops, plus the time spent shopping and price capturing, was nearly another 3 hours. I spent about an hour and 20 minutes in the kitchen, cooking, recording footage, washing and cleaning, capturing the time and motion, ingredients data. Just the video editing prior to this spoken part took 115 minutes to edit. I spent 25 minutes researching and calculating the nutrition, 12 minutes calculating the ingredient costs, 13 minutes on the cooking costs, and even just writing, rewriting and editing the script you're now listening to me read took 46 minutes up to this point right now, and it's only about halfway finished. And then I have to record and edit that and produce and upload the rest of the video and so on, which I don't have the numbers for at the time of writing this, but they will be on your screen right now. Why am I mentioning this? Well, not to try to beg for your sympathy. No, I love this job, and whilst it is definitely work, it's work that I find rewarding and enjoyable. My point in mentioning all of this unseen overhead time is twofold. Firstly, the minor point is just to explain why this couldn't be a whole week of videos like I originally hoped to make. I was going to do maybe 6 sessions of batch cooking like this one, 2 batch breakfasts, 2 batch lunches and 2 dinners. So they could be slotted into a week or more of meals where, whilst they might not have huge variety, wouldn't be completely monotonous. Except I realised early on that the effort required to do all of that was more than I could achieve if, in addition to cook, I also have to be researcher, camera person, editor, producer, etc. But the major point I want to make here is see how easy it was just to overlook hidden factors. It's a 20-something minute video, but it actually took me hours of work to make it. It's a 16p breakfast bun, but it really cost at least 8 times that much to make. And even that cost will be certainly omitting a whole load of ancillary and hidden stuff. For example, all the work I did here was done in a cosy, well-maintained, centrally heated home where the bills are all paid and where my commute to work is done wearing slippers up a single flight of carpeted stairs, where I get to use a kitchen that's well-equipped, enjoying comparatively good physical and mental health, fully clothed, fully rested, and with comfy safety nets like a well-stocked food cupboard and freezer to fall back on in case my breakfast buns turned out to be an inedible failure, which thankfully they didn't. I've no idea how to realistically break out prices for all those hidden factors, but I know for sure they aren't free. And I'm sure some people probably don't want me to stray into this territory, but I've kind of had enough of people trying to subvert the message of my budget challenge videos into something that oppresses people who are in difficult financial circumstances. Now, honestly, I don't think very many people do that. It's just that the ones who do so very loudly and brashly, and their views should not be allowed to stand unchallenged. For me to be silent on this seems like a form of complicity. My point is this. It's easy for some politician with a fat expense budget to pontificate on how poor people could just survive on 30p a day, if they're allowed to arrive at that number by only counting the raw cost of ingredients for a single bulk prepared meal, and conveniently ignoring every other variable, both financial and otherwise, ignoring all the factors that are absolute essentials of basic existence. If some of the ideas from this series have ever helped, that's great. If you got some enjoyment by laughing at me eating the inedible, that's also fine. If you found some inspiration in my problem solving, well, that's actually what I hoped for all along. But if you're one of those people who believe that anything I've ever done somehow proves that people on low incomes just aren't trying hard enough, I think you just need to shut your mouth and open your eyes properly. It's not as if these problems have no solutions. They probably do. The world could be better. It's just that the people who could make it better aren't interested in trying. Or perhaps trying to make it better for everyone doesn't serve their interests. And that whole thing about how the poor should just try harder is part of their justification. It's a smokescreen for not doing the things that are fixing the problem. I could go on, but words don't really help. I do apologise for the rant, but not the sentiment. If you're still watching at this point, thank you for your patience and understanding. So the future of what was the Budget Challenge series is probably going to include a few more videos like this one, where as best as I can, I'll just look at some ways of stretching a handful of ingredients to make a batch of something, and I'll try my best to include a full analysis of the cost and nutrition. That's not to say I won't also try some of the old-style budget challenges once in a while too, where you get to see me chewing on weeds and grated carrots. We'll see how that all works out. I hope this has been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.